Did you put your bottle somewhere safe?
Right here.
All right. Well, yeah, we're going to have to break it out. There's a story behind it, of course.
Now,
Just a little closer.
We're doing no headset. Yeah, we can. Yeah. We're all family here.
Yeah.
We're pros.
Yeah.
All right, so SEC Media Day's annual tradition, the Kentucky Sports Radio Boys. We can finally admit Mark Stoops is a CE coach.
No.
Coming out hot.
You got a way of doing that, Michael. You got a way of doing that, and I'm no, not a C coach. In fact, I came in, I did my homework. All right, I've been listening to the pod, I've been taking notes, and I'm ready to debate some takes.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. Mark Stoops is getting fired if he loses South Carolina.
Yeah.
Got some bad news for you, Mike.
That's a prediction right there.
First, you can't lose the Sunglass Bowl 3 years in a row, which, by the way, that's great.
Right.
That's a great name for that game, the Sunglass Bowl. But even if he does, I mean, we have to remember who
are they beating if they're losing to South Carolina at home?
Well, see,
they're going to get their ass whooped by Georgia,
that's
Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas. The losses start piling up.
That you're failing to remember is that the thing Mark Stoops says, he always loses a game he shouldn't. Mm-hmm. He typically wins a game he shouldn't either. And I know that now, in hindsight, beating up on Florida isn't as remarkable as it used to be, but when Kentucky's won, 4 out of the last 6, like it, how many of those times was Florida a top 10 team at the time?
Yeah, I mean, in the damn home.
Yeah. So I think even if they did slip up, there's plenty of opportunities to get big wins, because here's the thing, not all 7 and 5s are created equally. If you can win at Ole Miss, or I'm not going to say they're going to win at Texas, but there's opportunities beating Auburn. I know your line of thinking, but I think they can slip up and still win big. And also, we got to realize, Mark Stoops has more wins than any other Kentucky coach, right? Like, he's not...
And I think the path, obviously, like the big stat you all right, Missouri returning production last year.
Yeah.
That's Kentucky this year. They're up there towards the top. So can they turn that into anything? I think the offense is going to have be the ultimate determining factor.
That's what we talked about. Me and Nick had this conversation there in Nashville.
I know, and Shane's a believer, right?
I'm bringing it in.
Yeah. Help me out real quick, Shane. If you get an A in one class and you get an F in the other, what's your average?
C?
C coach, right there. That's how you get to the C coach.
Yeah, but
you said it yourself.
But I don't.
But does the A outweigh the F?
It does. Because here's the thing. Our colleague Drew Franklin, he failed English a few times, but he's a writer now. So you can fail a few times and still have plenty of success.
I think it's funny. Nick Roush lost a bet, and they're all thinking right now that's why he's wearing the cowboy hat.
Hey, how many times am I going to wear this stupid cowboy hat? Right?
You all are lucky Nick Roush made it on this program after he's had to watch your all's budding friendship with Eli Drinkwitz.
What is that, guys? Like, come on, it's drink. Like, you fell for it last year, and I know you're big fans of him, but that defense, it didn't get the credit it deserved for their success last year. So, are you worried that Drink might have lost the fastball a little bit there?
No, I think. Are you talking about why I don't think they'll be successful this year?
Yeah, Is there any worry that I know Mike over here.
He thinks they're going to suck.
No, Mike's ready to write him in the playoff. Brady Cook for Heisman.
Yep.
But is there more?
It's the scheduling. I mean, it's simple. Again, when we do these projections and these lists, we've done them all off season. Mm-hmm. I've always had Mizzou a little bit higher, not because of the talent that's returning to that football squad, but the talent and the schedule. If I gave Mizzou's schedule to you guys, we're sitting here talking like 7 is the low end.
That's fair enough.
I think that's the case that we make with them so much. Problem I have is with Missouri is, what does it look like if they hit the playoffs and they face Georgia or they face an Ohio State or something like that? Can they go toe to toe? I mean, they did in the bowl game, but it's different when you're going for a national championship. So I always have a little reserve and predictions. I mean, if everybody could do it, we'd be in Vegas right now loading it up.
I will say I did it 1 year. It was 2021, and every game I got right on the Kentucky schedule in the preseason. So
really?
I got my 1A, all right? I got my 1A one time, all right? A++.
Hey, well, we're meeting here on Florida Day. Does Kentucky get Billy Napier fired this year?
They've done it before. I mean,
Did they get him fired last year? It's just delaying the inevitable.
well,
He definitely lit him up, lit that seat, you know.
Yeah.
he had a chance to do something special in Kentucky. Wrecked Anthony Richardson and may have wrecked that season. So I don't know if Florida fans can handle another loss to Kentucky. It'd be a real shame if they had to endure another one. It would just break my heart.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting team to watch just in general. One, it's a huge game for Kentucky on the schedule. You look at the road games, that's probably the most winnable on paper. At where we're sitting right now in the middle of July. But for Florida, like if they lose that game, how bad could their record be, right? You know, especially how that schedule is in the back end in November. So,
And that's what with Florida, you've got Tennessee and you've got Georgia, and Kentucky sandwich right there, and you have them at home. I mean, you talk about the world caving in when you guys beat them the first time, 30 years down there. They were ready to fire everybody then. So if you do that between a Tennessee and a Georgia game where they're potentially starting off on a 0-3 streak, you know, maybe even, I mean, hell, you got A&M, you got Miami week 1. There could be a real shot that is the game. Would you fire them before Georgia, though? It seems like you kind of want to hang them out there for a little bit longer.
You go out there and take this L for us. Hold this L for us.
the problem, say that plays out. The problem is there's not an easy game to insert the coach down the stretch if you're Florida. So that's not a great situation. But Florida's fascinating to me because do they let the AD make another coaching hire if they did make a move? Because he's made a couple that haven't worked. Like how does that whole situation work out? And they're an interesting team because they got the Lagway component there with Graham Mertz is a good quarterback that they like, but would you be willing to pull your better quarterback just to give you a shot at having an extra year? There's a lot of different, I think, variables at play with Florida that make them interesting. And then let's say they're better than we're all thinking. They can play spoiler. They're at the end. You know, it's a 7-5 Florida team can really play spoiler when talking about playoff seeding scenarios. So they're a real fascinating team, I think, this year.
Are they more optimistic right now about that receiver room or that defensive front?
They're more optimistic. Like the floor is certainly higher for the defensive front of Kentucky's just because you got Deion Walker, right?
Yeah.
When you got a guy like that, to go back to the Florida game, I remember sitting there at the Swamp and people were like, "How did Kentucky get that guy? You know, how do you get one of those guys in Lexington?" But there is,
it's the best defensive line room they've had, top to bottom, since we've been coming.
Yeah. And Josh Allen was a freak, but Josh Allen kind of did a lot of it on his own. Whereas, I mean, a lot of talk is going to be here about Deion and how good he is and what all this guy can do, and he's a freak unlike any other. But how many redshirt junior, redshirt seniors are going to be lining up next to him, right? Like big, stout guys. And then behind him, De'Aaron Jackson, he's one of the best run-stopping linebackers in the league last year. So is Pop Dumas-Johnson. Now they're on the same team together. To beat Kentucky, you're going to have to be able to throw the ball effectively. And that's part of, to go back to your first question, Mike, is that's why I feel pretty good about playing South Carolina in week 2, because you're going to ask Lenore Sellers to do a lot through the air, and I don't know if he's going to be ready for that right out of the gate in his second game as a starter.
I guess you haven't seen that clip of him going around on those social media on the video game, have you? He ran backwards like 500 yards.
What's that? What is that, AI?
So stupid.
I missed that clip. I am curious, though, if Kentucky, because, the receivers, they're being a little cautiously optimistic with the passing game in general. They talked a lot of, I don't want to say smack, but they were bullish on Devin Leary a year ago, and it didn't work out. So they've been cautiously optimistic. But if it hits, if Brock Vandegrift is the former 5-star that, we saw Carson Beck turn into a first-round NFL draft pick last year, if he hits, the receivers take to coaching now their slump, they can beat some really good football teams. So my question to you guys is what's the most possible big-time upset where Kentucky, you can look up and say, well, we didn't see that one coming.
Well, it's not Tennessee. I kind of wanted to say that, but I wouldn't say it around him.
Damn it, Mike! I was getting all excited, and then you bring me down, and you got to remind me that I owe this guy a bottle of booze.
I think it'll probably be Ole Miss. Now I'm very high on Ole Miss. I think they'll make the playoff. I think they could win the national championship. I think they're that good. But they also, when you put together a renegade free agent team, who knows what happens? One loss here that you don't see coming, and it could be the Kentucky loss. All of a sudden, that derails a weak locker room. And I'm not saying it is a weak locker room, but it could be.
Yeah, and that game is very similar to 2 years ago when Kentucky went down there. Now, Ole Miss is a better football team on paper heading into this year than they were that year. But Ole Miss hadn't been tested to that point in the schedule. Where Kentucky will be tested twice by South Carolina and Georgia before they play that game on September 28th. So that, just drawing it out that way, that you could see them maybe Kentucky hitting them with a punch that maybe Ole Miss wasn't ready for, that maybe they can win that game. And they played nothing but close games. Like both those games they played since Kiffin has gotten there.
And that's not a very hostile environment either. I don't care what they say.
Yeah, when you see it is kind of wild seeing doing the new SEC stuff, and you see the stadium rankings, and you're like, wait, they should be ranked. Oh, but that's a good stadium, and that's good. And it's like ranking the rivalry games now, right?
Yeah.
You add Red River, you add Texas and A&M. Like there's so many good ones, and
Hey, Texas is one. You're talking about big games. That's your tail end of the season. Maybe Texas has kind of secured what they think is a college football playoff spot. You got A&M the week right after. I mean, that's you look at Texas last year. There was 3 games within a possession that Houston one in particular that was embarrassing. So Sark and company have a tendency to kind of take their eye off the prize sometimes. So that's one that I wouldn't say that. Like if you had a shot, an upset alert, trap game.
And you could be worn down too. I mean, that's what Sark talked about at the big podium, was just the week in, week out wear and tear of the grind of playing in the SEC, where they've been building the roster for it. But it's one thing to have just the players; it's another thing to go through that. Right. It's completely different.
Yeah.
Well, Mark Stoops asked the fans to pony up how many times this year?
I hope it's not after they lose by 50 points.
That's an interesting question. And not because of what he said, because of what has happened this offseason. It's been very much bunker mentality.
Yeah.
Like they're
over the doors.
Over the last 2 years, they weren't afraid to hype themselves or talk to people who would hype them up.
Yeah.
There is none of that going on. They have been very, very quiet and not letting much leak out and not saying anything good or bad about Brock Vandagriff, whether on the record or off the record. There has been very much, we're not letting anything leak out. We're just going to kind of lie in the weeds. And I personally think that's what you're going to see from Stoops tomorrow. You're not really going to see him say anything declarative one way or the other. I think they probably like that they're going last here, the last afternoon on Thursday. Now, does that end up in anything? I mean, I don't know, but I think it's been a concerted effort, and I think Nick will agree that they have, let's lay low. I think they thought the hype maybe got too out of control last 2 years with Levis and Leary kind of driving those off-season content trains. So now they're just going into a season, I think, where people, in most conversations, and I don't know if you all agree, like Kentucky really doesn't even come up.
Yeah.
Because they're not the worst team or one of the second or third worst teams. They're not the best second or third. They're just kind of stuck there in that middle, like that weird 7-5 middle that maybe they could get 9-3. But what does 9-3 matter if you got to get the 10-2 and make the playoffs? They're in that weird kind of spot. But I think when you look at their best seasons, that's when they have come typically under Stoops, is when they kind of could sneak up on teams. And I think that's probably the angle they're going for in 2024.
Get a chip on their shoulder. I mean, Benny Snell used to light like predictions on fire when they had him going 5-5. Like I think they want the nobody believes in us in the locker room as kind of the Youngstown, like backs against the wall. We got this.
Selling tickets in the Walmart parking lot. Remember that? Was that one of them?
That was
Cash Daniel.
Cash, wasn't it? Yeah.
Remember that?
He was selling tickets at the park.
That was a long time ago. I think y'all are making that up. I don't know about all that.
But even then, though, he didn't have to do that a week later after they won games that we didn't think they would. So you could see that this fan base can easily have a fire lit under them and become one of the wildest environments. I think I saw you. Sorry, I get choked up a little bit, but
they were talking about you're thinking about losing in Kentucky. Is that what it is? It's bringing a tear to your eye.
No, it's home field advantage, and one of these lists came out and had Kentucky, I think, 2 from the bottom.
Yeah.
I think you can make the case that's true right now. But 2 years ago it wasn't, because I just think that the fan base was just in a different spot.
Well, and a lot of it is, like I said, you start drawing out the list. The one thing Kentucky doesn't have going for them is the Grove. Like they don't have like a thing in particular. Like Mississippi State, it's the damn cowbells. They make it hell. Kentucky doesn't have a thing, but they bring it, man. That Florida game last year, that place was on fire from start to finish, even for the noon kickoff. And that goes back to that South Carolina game. That's going to be 3:30 on ABC, the only first SEC versus SEC game of the year, I believe. That place is going to be rowdy. And if you win that one, then you get them coming back for more later, right? And then went back to that 21 season where you beat Florida, and then all of a sudden LSU's coming to town, and the place is packed, and they're calling Baton Rouge while they're chasing Ed Orgeron out of town.
Right. Yeah, and this is where things could get sticky for Kentucky. They've not been good at home.
Yes.
Last 2 years. They just haven't been good. And they have to be good at home this year, or it's going to be a bad season.
You got the stat?
They're 3-7 in the last 10 SEC games at home. Or 3-7, 2-7, and then 3-7 if you count the Louisville wins. So they played 10 power conference teams in the last 2+ years, and they're 3-7.
Let's do
You got
that.
to win at home.
So SEC home games, just for the listeners: South Carolina, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Auburn.
They're going to be
All but one a winnable game.
They'll be a double-digit dog in the Georgia one, and they'll probably be double-digit favorite in Vandy, and then the other two they'll be a favorite against South Carolina for sure, and Auburn will be close, one way or the other. So you got to win. You go 3-1, you're probably going to have a good year. If you don't,
Yeah.
it's going to be a bad year.
It's a tough schedule, but I mean, at least you got that home. I think home field advantage is a big deal because you're not at. Maybe you don't have the home field advantage of Death Valley, but at least you're not in Death Valley trying to get that win.
Yeah. And
Did you feel that hot air? I thought Roush farted or something. Someone just opened the door. But what's your confidence level, Coach Wolfback, the offensive line coach, that we can get back to the big blue wall? Because it's the damnedest thing. I mean, that was Kentucky's identity for a long time.
Right.
And then they finally got a quarterback, finally got some receivers, and then the offensive line struggled.
yeah, it's almost like you patch one hole and then another one leaks. You're Clark Griswold at the Hoover Dam. I think Luckett will agree with me here that I don't think they're going to be the big blue wall this year, but the mentality and the scheme, the style, Bush Hamden, we don't know a lot about him, but every year he's called plays, he's had a 1,000-yard rusher. And part of the batten down the hatches is wanting to get to this downhill, north-south running, chip train him. He's built like a brick you-know-what house. I mean, that guy is a good-looking player. They're going to want to run the football. They're going to want to run the football with Brock Vandegrift. And I think they can, but they're not going to have an All-American like Darren Kennard out there, right?
From 2019 to 2021, they were legitimately one of the best 3 offensive lines in the league. I just don't think that's coming back. That was a special group, and how they got those guys was unique. And the guy who built
in-state guys,
and who built the room was just like a unique blend of things that happened for Kentucky. I don't know if that's ever coming back, but I do think they can be improved. And it's hard to be as bad as they were in 2022. This will be the best line they've had since 2021, but it's still going to be middle of the pack in the SEC. And for Kentucky, it's like you got to figure out how can we score points with an offensive line, like an adequate offensive line, adequate to good offensive line, above average offensive line. Having a great offensive line, building that consistently at Kentucky, that can't be your identity to me. Like you can't, it can't be what you hang your hat on. So we got to be elite on the offensive line. Everybody wants to be good, but you can't be elite. And for Kentucky, I think they're getting to the point where they're going to be in better shape there in the offensive line. It's not going to be as bad as 22, but they have to figure out a way to win without having dominant offensive lines. And I just don't know, to answer your question, Mike, I don't think that's coming back. So you got to figure out another way.
I mean, they had 2 high school All-Americans from the state. They got a guy from Cleveland who was their first consensus All-American at offensive tackle since ~65.
They got a low 3-star recruit from middle of nowhere or somewhere in Ohio.
Who turned into this Jag starting center, a lot of crazy stuff had to hit the right way, but they did go and get a guy from the portal in Gerald Mincy who's got 26 starts over 2 years at Tennessee, and you're smiling. You're saying you can take him? Okay.
No. We needed depth, but that's all right.
But that's a solid, offensive linemen are difficult to get in the portal. Marcus Cox, they found a quality guy, kind of hidden gem, who's now going to be a super senior that's probably going to be, fifth round, late round draft pick.
Day 3.
Yeah. So, they've done a good enough job kind of putting the Band-Aids over it to make it adequate this season. It's just, to your point, I think it's good enough, but it's not going to be the foundation of their success offensively. Barryon Brown's got to make some plays, Jamori Michael, the transfer from North Texas, show us something. Brock Vandegrift kind of needs you to be the man, You don't need to be the best quarterback in the SEC, but you got to be in the middle of the pack. Maybe try to do something like your boy Brady Cook.
Yeah.
Right? Could you see that sort of trajectory for a guy like Brock where, he has a surprising year, and then year 2, we're sitting back here in Atlanta, and we're coming on the show, and Michael's like, Brock Vandegrift, best quarterback in the league. I can see that path.
Yeah.
I can see that path.
I can see it.
Did Kirby Smart make a mistake starting Carson Beck over Brock Vandegrift?
I can be 200 pounds if I stop eating these cookies.
There is something, though, where Kentucky, Georgia, we fall for it all the time. We want to believe in the big stuff, but people forget that Georgia fans weren't sold on Carson Beck until he balled out against Kentucky.
Yeah.
If Kentucky could just apply a little game pressure and have a third quarter moment where it's a little tight, and then you get the Georgia fans saying, wait, did we make the wrong decision? Kentucky's got all these former Georgia guys. What did they come out there and play the game of their lives against them? Yeah. I'm talking myself into it again.
You know who they tried to get? Not a lot of people knew this or paid close attention, but Georgia tried to get Caleb Williams. Over. I guess this would have been if
Stetson didn't work
last
out.
year. Yeah, they were trying to get. But to your point, do you do that if you believe in Carson Beck? I don't think you do.
Carson Beck turned out to be pretty good, though.
Yeah. All right, any last questions?
I don't feel bad for Kirby Smart if that's what you're asking.
Did you guys already do your projections? Your predictions?
We haven't gotten on record yet and permanent ink yet.
Yeah.
But I'm right at 7-5. I think that's where it'll end up.
7-5.
Yeah, and I think not all 7 and 5s, like I said earlier, created equally. And one way to make me feel better about my 7 and 5 is if I don't have to bring a bottle of bourbon to SEC Media Days next year for old cousin Shane. Shane, do you have the
Well, here's the thing. Greg Sankey's right behind you.
Yeah, he
so
literally
I think
is.
maybe we just kind of hold off till a later time.
He's like, who's that clown with a blue cowboy hat passing out bourbon on the radio? Well, I got you.
Checks notes, KSR. Okay.
I made a special selection this year. I picked out 1792, in which you're well versed in some Kentucky bourbon. You've heard of 1792, right? And you know why the name is 1792?
No.
Because that's how many points Josh Heupel scored on Kentucky over the last 3 years. Can we? I'm really worried we got another Fulmer on our hands, Luckett.
What you don't want is a new streak. I hate streaks. In fact, when we lost to Kentucky for that first time, I was upset because we've been doing it for so long that you had that streak going on. We had the longest, I believe, winning streak in the SEC against another SEC opponent.
And in Kentucky, that was relatable. Kentucky had 5 in a row against Beamer or South Carolina and co., and then you lose a couple there. But and that's my fear. My ultimate fear now is that in Kirby Smart's first year, Kentucky was driving down to win the game. Benny Snell's putting the team on his back, and he got a bunch of 3rd and shorts, and he finally got stuffed on one. They kick a field goal to tie instead of score a game-winning touchdown. Rodrigo Blankenship marches down. They march down the field. Blankenship kicks the game-winning field goal as time expires, and that's as close as you've been. I fear that Olante Taylor's pick 6 was a sliding doors moment where you had Tennessee right in your grasp.
10-2, New Year's Six Bowl if you win that game.
And then they just he jumps the route and
dance in the end zone.
And then the worst part was that he called his shot before the game, and then he just came and did it.
He did. You don't lose to Kentucky. I think that's what he said. One last thing for me, Mike. Since we're on this note,
you want to do your celebratory dance a little more?
No, I'm not going to do that. But I would like to meet later, and we'll get a picture out there. And I appreciate you. I know it's tough, man. Because I have lost. I think once No, I'm just kidding. but you got to remember, when I lose, I got to do it 5 times. You know, I've got to go to the bourbon store or
He's got a bunch of our listeners that he makes the bet with.
Yeah, because I've got 5 that I got to send off.
So you're stockpiling for this year's when you got to pay up. Is that what you're saying?
No, I never send Kentucky bourbon. I always send Tennessee whiskey. So,
well, I heard you've got a wager to pay up on, right?
Well, I've got a few on the line right now. We've got a milk chugging contest.
Oh,
We've
no.
got.
Don't you have to drink a bunch of beers with Drink? Or
Yeah, Drink brought that up too. He bet. He guaranteed Kentucky was going to beat Missouri, and for every point he was wrong, he'll drink a beer on the live show.
Here's the deal.
And Missouri won by 17 points, so he had to drink 17 beers.
17 beers. That's a lot of beers, man, for a 1-hour show.
yeah. So like,
You know?
Yeah, 2 hours is very, very doable. You get it down to 1 hour. That's kind of tough.
Right idea. I was like, okay, I'll get. Maybe they got small beers and they got those little cornetas. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. But then, and like when there's a clock, I drink and I have fun, you know, and I end up smoking cigarettes, whatever, you know.
Under pressure, didn't you?
But
you
man,
couldn't handle the
well,
clock.
the problem was what I didn't disclose is the very next day I had a cardiologist appointment. And I didn't want to come in there just hung over as shit, or as shit as I would, you know. Sorry, I feel like my dad's over there, you know. But that's kind of the full situation, and I feel bad because that was the one bet I did not complete, and
you're a man of your word.
I need to make it up. Now, Drink he is inviting us over, so maybe I can pound 17 before I go in to watch the Mizzou Oklahoma game.
Hey,
He asked Drink if he could pound the Mizzou drum at the Oklahoma game.
Yeah.
hey, that pizza place down there is legit.
I got a message, and guy says he can get us in. He goes, I may be able to help you with the drum. So I was like, shit, I'm in. So.
Hey, that field, it ain't a great stadium. It ain't. But that Como, underrated town. Very nice.
Yeah.
I'll give Como credit there. That's me saying a nice thing about Missouri.
I'm about to say, wow.
You're welcome.
What a turn for you.
Shakespeare's rules.
Yeah.
It does rule.
Nice.
Before you guys go, can you tell the audience how to follow you, how to find your work?
Yeah, Adam Luckett, KSR.
Roush KSR is my Twitter handle. We're at KentuckySportsRadio.com. 11 Personnels, our podcast. If you're a Tennessee fan, you already know this because you watch us every week and you comment in the chat. We love all.
Keep coming. Yeah, KSR Plus. Join right now for $1, Tennessee fans. Please come on. We have good banter on there.
We'll take them all.
All right, perfect.